Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
You're about to leave for the day, and you decide to take a peek at tomorrow's schedule. First thing you noticed is hygiene looks pretty good. There's no openings. And then you peek at your schedule, and it's booked really well. It's a productive day. You're well above what you want to do on a daily basis for your goal. You look at your first appointment of the day. It's an 8:30 appointment, and it's a large procedure. You're going to be prepping 6 crowns and doing some fillings. This is the majority of your production for the day. So you go home, you know you have a nice day booked for tomorrow. You get up in the morning, you come to work, you're excited to get going. And then when you go in your office to put your stuff away, your computer's on and the schedule's up. You look at the schedule again and you notice that there's no patient at 8:30 this morning. As a matter of fact, you have no patients for the next 2.5 hours. So you go talk to your front desk or your schedule coordinator, your office manager, dental assistant, whoever you speak to about these things, and you ask, what happened to Mr. Smith, your 8:30 patient, and they tell you that they received an email last night or a voicemail saying that Mr. Smith forgot he had another appointment and won't be making it today. So now you're a bit perturbed. Obviously, you've got 2.5, 3 hours on your hands with not much going on except a couple of recall exams. Your front desk is scrambling. And the overall vibe in the office has definitely dropped a bit. People aren't as happy. You've had a large cancellation. Cancellations and no-shows, if I were to survey dentists, and I have dentists and office managers over the years, usually rank in the top 5 as far as things that are annoying, stressful, and upsetting that happen in the office. They throw the schedule off, and truthfully, they cost offices anywhere from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And it's not like nobody's attempted to solve these things. There's whole patient management softwares that have been created to resolve these things that send out reminders and texts and emails and things like this. There's been hundreds of articles written on should you charge a cancellation fee or things along these lines. So it's been a problem that's plagued the industry for a while, and people have made attempts at solving it, but it still happens. So is there a real solution for cancellations and no-shows? Yes, there is, especially on the doctor's schedule, but even the hygiene schedule. And that's what I want to talk to you about in this week's episode. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host. And let's just start off with a couple basic definitions, right? So we're all in agreement. I mean, you know what these are, but I have to start off this way. So what's a cancellation? Patient tells you they're not coming. Now, I could tell you 3 weeks from now that I have a hygiene appointment and I'm not coming. Well, that's a nice cancellation. Or I could just call you 10 minutes before my appointment. I've still technically canceled. It's just a little bit rougher, right? Then we have a no-show. Some offices call them a failed appointment, where 8:30 comes, Mr. Smith was supposed to be there. It's 8:45, 9 o'clock. Mr. Smith just didn't show up and you never heard from Mr. Smith. That's a no-show or a failed appointment. Obviously, cancellations are better than no-shows a little bit, depending on when the cancellation occurred, but they both end up with the same net result, which is no patient in that slot where you had originally scheduled them. Now, how you go about handling these things differ slightly with regards to hygiene and the doctor's schedule. Obviously, cancellations and no-shows on the doctor's schedule are more impactful from a revenue perspective in the office. And unfortunately, it tends to throw the doctor off a bit too, especially if it was a large procedure. So it has a more broad effect on the office. Obviously, with hygiene, you're going to have more cancellations and no-shows just because of numbers. It's a higher percentage because you have more patients flowing through that area. So why do people, for the most part, cancel or not show? Well, there's 3 big reasons, right? One would be they just forgot. That does happen, right? 2 would be they had a real life issue that caused them to not show up. And 3 is they just don't want to come, or they didn't make it important enough to show up. So what do we do about these? Obviously, if a patient forgot, this is where that reminder type patient management software comes in that sends them a text and an email, and they have to confirm, and confirmation phone calls and confirming patients. This is why we have all of those things, to make people remember that they have an appointment. And that's usually not the majority of the reason. The biggest reason people don't show is reason number 3, but that solves people forgetting. Reason number 2, person has a real life situation. A family member just had an accident or got sick and they're on an airplane somewhere else. Well, there's really nothing you're going to do about that. And again, that happens, but it's not happening the majority of the time. That's creating these cancellations and no-shows. The big reason for cancellations and no-shows. The primary reason is, especially with larger procedures on the doctor's schedule, is the patient is not sold. Okay? The patient is not sold. So what do I mean by sold? Because I think people tend to get confused about this. So you've presented a treatment plan to me. I need 6 crowns, and I tell you that I want to do them. Does that make me sold? Think about that for a second. It does not. How would you know if I'm sold? Well, let's take this to another type of an industry. If I go to, Neiman Marcus, and someone's showing me a suit, and I go, say the salesperson's name is Gene. Gene, I am sold on that suit. Does Gene consider that I am sold on that suit? Absolutely not. You know how Gene knows if I'm sold on the suit? It's when I've paid Gene and taken delivery of the suit. That's how Gene knows I am sold, or at least have set up to go get the suit fitted, right? But I've paid. The way you know if someone is sold, is they have paid for the item or service. Now let's transpose this over into a dental practice. How would this look? So you've presented a patient their treatment plan. You've told the patient how much it costs, and they have paid. I did an episode on creating financial policy for your practice a while back. You may have different financial policy. I suggest that you have some form of a prepayment discount where a patient can pay for their treatment in advance, not the day before, but now. You might have it where this is all dependent upon you, okay? You might have a half down, half in 30 days. Again, I mentioned back then I would not associate, if you're doing half now, half later, associate it with time, don't associate it with delivery. And, truthfully, I've been in the industry for a while. You have more financial instruments at your disposal now than anybody's ever had before, where you could have, where you could debit their checking account. You get these forms made by your lawyer or by your credit card company. You debit their credit card. There's different ways you can get these forms to do it, but you have more financial instruments than anybody's ever had before. So you might have a financial policy where someone can pay half now and half in 30 days, whatever that is in your practice. I do suggest prepayment. That's usually the best way to go, and you might want to offer some form of a prepayment discount. So you've told the patient how much it is, and they've prepaid for their treatment. They are now sold. They've paid. Okay, that's how you know if somebody's sold. And you might go, well, Jeff, people aren't going to prepay for healthcare. People aren't used to prepaying. That's absolutely not true. If you take a look at how life operates, if I go to the supermarket, if I go to Safeway, Publix, Giant, wherever I go, if I throw maybe I didn't pay in advance before I got my groceries, but if I throw my groceries in the cart and go to the cashier, I can't walk out and tell them to bill me. I can't do that at Neiman Marcus, or you can't go to Lululemon and take your jogging pants and a couple hoodies and go, yeah, I'll send you a check in 30 days, right? That doesn't work that way. People are used to this. I mean, heck, even if you go get your car repaired, sure, you didn't prepay for the repair, but guess what? If you don't pay for it, you don't get your car. You can't do the same thing in the office. You can't keep a patient's crowns, right? I mean, I guess you could. That would be kind of terrible, but that does you no good and them no good, and that's not why you're there. So people are used to paying for things, at the time they receive them, or before they receive them especially. People are used to doing this. If you want to go fly somewhere, you pay for the airline tickets, then you get the ticket. This is not an uncommon thing. It may take a little bit of getting used to do this this way in your practice, but it's something that you can do, and it tells you that the patient is sold, which is going to make them showing up a lot more probable. As a matter of fact, we teach this to clients very early on in our program, and then clients find that, wow, patients' memories have improved. Their car started in the winter, and, when it used to not start, and they missed their appointment. Their kids don't have a tummy ache today, and they show up for their dental appointment, okay, because they've paid. A person pays, they show. How would this conversation go? Because you might go, well, how am I going to ask a patient to prepay? I did a whole episode on handling objections, and I've talked about handling financial arrangements before, but it's very simple. You get to the end of the treatment plan and the patient wants the treatment. You've told them, this is the doctor saying this, by the way, how much it costs. And then, let's say, okay, this treatment plan's $13,000. What's the patient going to say? Wow, doctor, that is a lot of money. And you can say, yeah, I understand. It's a lot of treatment. And then you could ask them, well, how would you normally pay for something like this? And they might say, well, I don't know. Do you take payment plans? Like, what are my options? They might say something like that, or they might say, well, I can put it on my Visa card or whatever. And you go, well, look, Here's a couple options. One, you can pay in advance. You prepay, you pay today, and you can save an additional 5%. So it's a $13,000 treatment plan. You're going to save $650 if you pay today. Or if you have a half down, half later option, you can explain that with no discount. Or if they're really pushing for a payment plan, you can say, good, we do our payment plans through XYZ companies, and we'll just have you fill out an app and you sign the paperwork and we're done. In either of those, the patient is now, once they've paid, they're sold. And, I've had people ask me, what about having them put a deposit down because they're, reserving time on the doctor's schedule and the deposit is, $250 or, something like this. I personally don't think that that's really that effective. And for that matter, I'm not even a super big fan, and I'm not telling you to do this or not do this. I'm not even a huge fan of cancellation fees because what are you going to charge that patient who didn't show up for their 6 crowns and fillings? $150? Or $59, like that doesn't do anything. Maybe for a hygiene appointment, it at least gets you somewhere to paying the hygienist for that hour. But if you lose 2.5, 3 hours, that does, does nothing. So that isn't really a solution. The solution is to get the patient to sign up and to pay. That handles it. And like I said, it's very simple. You've explained how much it is. The patient says that's a lot of money. You understand. How would they pay for it? And they'll start coming up with solutions. Well, could I put it on a credit card? Yes. As a matter of fact, if you pay today, you can save 5%. Could I give you half now? Sure. You could pay half now and half in 30 days. You just sign some paperwork because we're going to debit your credit card. Could I fill out a payment plan? Yeah, you could do a payment plan. We do it through XYZ company. You just handle it right then and there. And if they've paid, they will not cancel. And again, they will remember about their appointment. And keep in mind, because it's very easy to get fixated on this, right? Oh, I'm asking for money. This is bad or whatever. We're not doing this about the money because, in that example I gave earlier where the patient doesn't show, the patient didn't get the treatment that they needed. We're doing this. Money is a medium of exchange. Okay. That's really all it is. It allows us to keep the lights on, pay the staff, pay for our student loans and things like this. But the most important thing is that we're actually doing the treatment on the patient, improving their quality of life and improving their health. That's why you're there. So it's not about just getting money when you're selling, but that's how you tell if somebody's sold. Try prepaying. That's how you actually make sure that the doctor's schedule doesn't end up with a bunch of cancellations and no-shows because patients who prepay are very likely to show up. Now, you could have a situation where someone prepays and then calls back later or calls back the next day and asks for their money back. Could that happen? Absolutely, that could happen. And you know what? Okay. Well, what would have been the other side of that? Let's say you didn't have that prepaid discount, and they just didn't pay. They just won't show. At least in this case, you know that you don't have to reserve that time for them and you can put another patient into that slot. Now, if that's happening to you a lot, let's say you've asked 4 patients a day to prepay and 2 are calling for a refund, well, then you're doing something wrong. There's something wrong with your sales process. This should not be something that's happening very frequently, which brings me to a couple points on prepay because we teach our clients this very early on, ask the patient to prepay. A lot of patients do. And, they start in some cases, usually the first month or two when they start this, they start collecting more than they're producing. It's like the exact opposite of what you normally see in a dental practice. Normally collections is, a good collections is 97% of what we produce. Well, in this case, they're collecting, 110 and they produce 90 this month. So because they're taking in prepayments. So there's a few things about this I just want to point out. Number one, if you are taking prepays, one of the things we watch with a client is if they out collect themselves for more than 2 months, we point that out to them so that they can actually catch this up. Because the one thing you don't want to do if you're having a patient prepay, number one, is make them wait a long time to actually start the treatment. That's sort of anticlimactic. You've asked me to prepay for my treatment plan, and then you get me on the schedule, 6 weeks from now. It's a bit of a joke. I should be in 3 to 4 days. If you can't get a productive procedure on your schedule within the next week, something is wrong. You need to do something about that. Okay. So that's the first thing. If you can ask a patient to prepay, get them in quickly. All right. Next thing is if you're asking for a considerable number of prepays, realize it sort of throws your accounting backwards. Okay. Because you're taking in money as a deposit that you really haven't earned yet from an accounting perspective. Right. You've taken this $10,000 for this treatment plan, but you're not delivering this treatment plan for 5 or 6 days. So a couple things. One, I wouldn't go blowing all the money right away. You want to make sure you at least retain some of it in case something goes wrong, the person leaves and decides they've changed their mind for that occasional back out, where the person decides they want their money back. And again, if it's a larger treatment plan, maybe that you're delivering over the course of 3 or 4 months, you want to make sure that you're sort of, I hate to use the word escrow because it's more of a legal term, but you're sort of retaining some of that money so that it's there as you deliver the case. This way you're not spending money that really doesn't belong to you yet that you haven't earned. So that's more the business side of it. But really the most important thing is if the patient pays, they show up, they get the treatment done, and you eliminate cancellations and no-shows on the doctor's schedule. So how does this apply to the hygiene schedule? Are we going to ask hygiene patients to prepay for their prophy? No, I think that's ridiculous. Why would you want to offer a discount for that even? Plus, it's, I've seen some offices where they'll have the patient pay before they go back to see the hygienist. Fine. But I'm not going to ask for prepays for, a hygiene appointment especially for just a prophy. What you could do, and I always like this was something Dr. Wintereg used to say to his patients when he was practicing, and it's, many of our clients say some variant of this. When you're doing some type of restorative work, you're prepping a couple crowns or you're doing whatever it is you're doing with a newer patient, you can tell them, look, I'm unwilling to do this treatment if you're not willing to come back every 6 months and let me check to make sure that everything's okay with it. You could say that in a nice way, but if the doctor makes something important for the patient, I've said this numerous times before, and if you don't believe me, if you're a doctor listening to this, survey your staff. Who is a patient most likely to listen to? It's going to be the doc, okay? So if you or the doctor are telling this patient you're about to do this restorative work and they have to agree, they're going to show up every 6 months so you can make sure that crown, those crowns are still staying healthy. They then get it planted in their mind that this is a bit of a big deal. You have to make hygiene a big deal in your practice. I did a couple episodes on this a while back, episodes 45 and 46 about really building up your hygiene department. But part of it was you have to make hygiene a big deal. You go into most dental practices and they're, posters for every other service they offer, whether it's sleep apnea or veneers or Invisalign or this or that. But there's nothing about just regular checkups when that's sort of the backbone of your practice, right? So that's something you could say before you do restorative work. You could even do it with a periodontal patient. Let's say you have a patient who you're going to be doing scaling and root planing on. You could say something like, we're going to help you get your gums in shape over the next four visits. Then after I restore your teeth, I need you to come see me every 3 months to stay on top of this. I need your agreement before I'm willing to proceed. Again, you could say this real nice. But the point being is for the patient, again, you're planting it in their mind that this is a big deal. You're not joking about it, and coming back regularly is extremely important. That'll make it important also for the patient. That will also help you eliminate cancellations and no-shows on the hygiene schedule. Now, are you going to ever have cancellations and no-shows again if you're doing these things? Yes, of course you are. That's like, you never say never, right? It does happen, but you will eliminate the vast majority of them if on the doctor's schedule patients pay when you present the treatment plan, whether that's prepaying, which is my favorite, or they do some form of whatever your financial policy allows. Again, I wouldn't recommend a small deposit. I think that that's ineffective. And on the hygiene schedule, if you make hygiene appointments a big deal and part of their oral health in the patient's mind, and the doctor reiterates this, you're much less likely to have cancellations and no-shows on the hygiene schedule. And, ultimately, like I said, the patient's not closed. How do you learn to close people? You have to know how to sell. This is my normal shameless plug in the episode, but if you really want to learn how to sell, I'll give you 2 options. One, I would suggest you come to the MGE Communications and Sales Seminars. I'll put a link to that on the episode webpage. We do them here in Florida. It's 9 days of training and you really learn how to sell. We also have some sales training on our online platform, DDS Success. I'll put a link to that too if you want to check that out. But that ultimately is what solves cancellations and no-shows for the most part. I'm not saying you shouldn't use these other softwares, and you can charge a fee if you want, but nothing solves it better, at least from my experience and I have thousands of case studies to back it up, than what I just told you about. Anyway, it's a shorter episode this week. I know I'm supposed to keep it 30 minutes or less. I think I'm going to end up under 20 this week, so that's pretty cool. I hope that helped. If you have any questions, you could always email me at jeffb@mgeonline.com. And if you'd like to know more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week. Try this in your practice. Give it a shot. If you have questions, let me know. And if you have any feedback, let me know how that goes. And we'll see you the next episode.